All right, so in this, we're going to talk about how to combine shapes, because right now, if you remember from the end of the last video, what I was saying is if we wanted, for instance, to be able to print in just a single color, whether it's white or black or whatever, we need to actually have the right and the left uh, shapes actually be knocked out of this background, because if we don't, then that means we would have to print white on top of this black shape in order to get this appearance. Instead, what we want to do is basically cut this out so that if we wanted a color to show through, then we could. Now, here's the idea that you could sort of use as a test. I'm going to create a new layer. Um, let's just drag it to the very bottom underneath everything, and let's just call it BG fill for background fill. And let's just use, like, say, some obnoxious bright color like yellow. Let's go ahead and just go grab yellow like that, and we're going to fill everything. Now that looks nice, but in order to print that like on a t-shirt or a poster, we'd actually have to use both white ink and black ink, right? And that's not the idea that you would want. If you wanted to just be able to use one color, what we need to be able to do is make it so that we don't have to print those two shapes, but we still get those cutouts and we see the yellow come through. All right, so in order to do that, then what we need to do, actually, I'm going to go ahead and lock that so that we can just turn it on and off, but we don't actually select it by accident or something. So what I want to do is I want to show you how you can combine shapes. And it's not the most intuitive, I think, in Photoshop. Sometimes it works really easily and sometimes it doesn't, depending sometimes on how the shapes are. So anyway, what I want to do is show you kind of a few things, how the path panel works and so on. So if I go down here and grab my black vector selection tool, I can select both of these shapes. I can hold down the shift key. Actually, I need to select them over here in the layer panel, and now I can select both of them. And uh, if I do that, let me just pull up under window, let's go to paths, and you can see here that what we've got are these two paths that are now selected. All right, and it's showing you what we're working with. There's some different things that you could do, right? One is that you could come over here and you could, inside of paths, you could go where this little raster path is, like you could click on that and it loads it as a marquee, right? And then if I wanted, I could use that to select this base mountain and then just put a mask on it. But I need to, if I do that, it's not going to be what you expect. Like if I mask that, see, it masks the actual mountain. I'm going to undo that. What I need to do is I would need to inverse this selection. So I'll go to select, inverse, and now I could put a mask on this layer, right, where it's just a more traditional mask, and you might go, wait, it's still white. That's because these two things are still visible. Now you'll see that that's actually a knockout. Okay, so when we do that, now what's nice is that we've still preserved these two shapes, so that if we did want to spend the extra money on a yellow t-shirt, for instance, to have this to be solid white, we could go ahead and pay for that to be solid white. There is another thing that you could do. I'm going to duplicate this. Let's just go ahead and duplicate this entire group. So I'll call this first one, we'll call it mountain with mask. All right, just for right now, we can go back and change this later. And then let's call this one combine shapes or something like that. Okay, and first thing I'll do is I'm going to, now I can lock it and now I can turn the visibility off. That way you know you're not messing with it. So let's go to this one that we called mountain combine shapes. I'm going to go ahead and remove this mask completely. So let's just, I'm going to unlink it, then I'm going to take it and drag it in the trash. And I'm dragging the thumbnail of the mask in the trash, not the actual shape. And it's saying, do you want to delete the layer mask? Yeah, delete it. Okay, so now if I take these shapes up here again, they're there, right? But the knockout is gone. Okay, so we're back to where we started, okay? Now what I want to do is I can take all three of these, I can select all of these, right? And while these things are selected, I can come up here. Oops, sorry. I can go up here to layer, and then under combine shapes, I can choose subtract front shape. And it will actually subtract these front shapes that are on top of the bottom. Now what it did was it changed the fill color, that black fill color, it changed it to match the white fill color of the shapes that were on top. So it took the fill color of the top shapes. But that's easy to change. I could always just change that. But what I want you to notice right off the bat is that it got rid of my other two shapes when I did that. All right, if you look over here in the layer panel, when I use combined shapes, it literally got rid of them. So, all right, now remember, I don't even have the option of working on this mountain with mask by accident, so I know I'm not selecting the shapes from there. All right, if I go back up here, it allows me to actually still select these, and let's give that a different fill color. Let's do something stupid like pink. Now see, that's what happens though. It doesn't allow me to select these interior shapes to give them color anymore. Now what it's going to do is it's only going to apply a fill color to that background because I've used the combined shape. So I've lost the ability to have separate colors for these when I do it that way. So there's nothing wrong with doing this. In fact, it's a good way to do it. However, if you want to maintain those original shapes, I'm going to go back up to history. Let's go there, okay? And now we've got these shapes here again. What I could do is I could duplicate these, right, so that I continue to have my right and left mountain shape. So I'm going to take these, I'm going to drag them down to the new page icon, and then it duplicated those for me. So I'll just turn these off for right now. And in fact, let's just get rid of, let's take these, let's move the base up here. Actually, sorry, let's move these up to the very top. All right, these are the ones that are called copy. If I drag this out, I want to take the ones that are called copy and blend them in with the base mountain shape, okay? So I'll turn these off, I'll turn these on. Sorry if that was a little confusing. So I'm taking my copies that are inside. If you look here, it's inside of my mountain combined shapes. All right, I had made copies in there. I'm going to select all of these right here, all three of these. So my right mountain shape copy, my left mountain shape copy, and my base mountain shape. I'm going to select all of these, and I'm going to take them and I'll go up to layer, combine shapes, and then I will say subtract front shape. Okay, and then what it does is it gives me the same thing that I had before. What I showed you before, I'll change the fill color to black. In fact, if we want to make sure it's pure black, we can go here to the color picker, and then yeah, it is pure black, and we'll just stick with that. And now what you see is we've got the knockout. It preserves it as a full vector combined shape. But if we wanted to be able to have that fill color there of the white snow cap for a secondary color later, we do still have these snow caps here, right? And you could leave these as separate shapes if you wanted to maintain their ability to be modified or whatever. You could also combine them so that they sort of behave as one unit. But anyway, those are some different options. So I showed you how you could either do it using completely with the vector tools. And what's really interesting, just so you know, like whenever I did that before, you'll notice that this is traditionally the place that you ought to be able to just jump up and go and say, oh, subtract front shape. But you'll notice that earlier, even earlier, like right now it's grayed out because I don't have multiple things selected, but you'll notice that earlier it was still grayed out, but yet the same option was available under layer. And then whenever I went to combine shapes, it was actually available. So sometimes that's weird, and I just want to let you know that I've noticed some wonky stuff with Photoshop where things won't be available for vector Pathfinder type of things, but they will be when you go under layer and then you go to combine shapes, and then you get the same options, but they're not grayed out and they actually work. So I'm just letting you know about that. It's kind of a strange thing. But I showed you how you can do it that way, or how you can do it this way where you are using a mask, right? And you've got, you know, you're basically making selections of those shapes, then you're choosing the inverse, and then you put a layer mask on top of the base selection. So those are two different options, however you would want to do that. Now, one thing that I want to show you, let's just take a look at how it might deal with something. If we, for instance, chose this one that had the mask, let's put an outline or a stroke on it just so you can see how it would behave. And just so that we can see it very clearly, I'll put a white stroke on it, and we'll give it, let's make it like maybe 9 pixels or something, okay? And we'll see how that looks. All right, so that's got a stroke. Now notice that it doesn't stroke it on the inside. Let's see how it behaves up here. Here, let's turn that eyeball off, and let's go in here, and then I'm going to take my right mountain shape copy. Here, let's turn these off. All right, and let's take this, and then now what we'll do is go up here to stroke, and we'll give it a white fill. Not a white fill, a white stroke. And we'll change this also to 9 pixels so we can see it. And look what it does. This is the difference of doing it this way, where you are combining shapes, versus using a mask like we did it before. Notice that it actually applies that stroke to the interior shapes as well. Okay, and that may be what you want, and it may not be what you want. In this case, it definitely doesn't look right. All right, it doesn't look good at all. Maybe it would look better if the stroke were smaller. Maybe that would be acceptable. But see, I can't really see it now. And if let's try it where we're using like a red color. Not that that's what I would actually do, but I still would need it to be a larger stroke. And see, it would maybe be okay, except that this gets a little bit close. I would probably have to go back and adjust that. And I don't also like the way that this point ends up being really thick in a distance whenever you look at it. You know, so in this particular instance, the way that I think that I would want it applied is I would definitely want it applied as an actual layer mask where I don't end up with the stroke around it like that. Okay, but most likely if I were to use it with a stroke, I would have it like that. And what I also might do, for instance, is I might have this, I might give it a stroke, but maybe I would give it no fill, right? And so maybe I've just got this white outline. So you can do different things with this. And then if I were to do that, for instance, let's say that that's something that I liked. Let's say that this background color is a different color. Let's say it's something darker. Maybe it's like a dark sort of crimson or red color, okay? And let's fill it, right? And so there we've got this red color. Maybe white would look better and sort of fresher than this black on red. Black on red sort of feels very Macbethian, right? It's like very bloody feeling and very severe. Maybe having white on red would feel a little bit different. So in this case, maybe I would want to come and I would want to change my text color, right? And so I could do all of this, and I could change my text color so that instead of using black as your single color, maybe your logo then could end up going with white as your single color. And instead of having a solid fill up here, you've got an outline with your snow caps as white, right? And so it gives you some different options whenever you start to really think about the possibility of having knockouts and solid color and so on. But you need to always try to originally develop your logo so that it works in either like pure black or pure white. White would be, you know, on the black reversal. So, and then later you can start to think about adding color, okay? And just really quickly before we end, I just realized something that I had done by accident, and I want to make sure that you didn't do the same thing, because as we move forward, there might be some things that I show you how to do that this thing will cause a problem with. So if you go to, I'm going to go to my type layer, and let's go to the character panel. I want to show you something I did by accident. So first of all, in my character panel, I want you to notice that right now you'll see that this bolded T is selected, and that is a setting that I think I had selected a while back whenever I was messing around with some stuff, and it just remembered that setting. And what that is it's a faux bold. What it is a lot of times if you have, let's say, a typeface that doesn't have multiple styles, like it doesn't have a bold style or an italic style or a condensed style or whatever, it doesn't have certain kinds of styles. There are certain kinds of styles that you can apply a faux style to, in this case, faux bold, faux italic, and so on, faux strike through. The problem with that is that if later you ever decide that you want to convert your text to a shape for any reason, it will not allow you to do that. If you wanted to turn it into, say, a vector shape for some reason. So if you want to make sure that you're not using a faux style, and I recommend that you don't, it's generally a good idea not to use a faux style. So let me show you what I'm talking about. If I go to my text tool and I select all, you'll see that this faux bold is still selected, and that's a mistake. If I click on that, you'll notice automatically it gets smaller, and it actually it has the inherent qualities of the type that it's supposed to have. And so what I could do is I could go and adjust the way that this Spire Outdoor Adventures looks, or I could go and adjust the scale of the mountains. Either one is fine, but because I've got two versions of my mountain folder, I think for right now I'll just go ahead and I'll adjust the mountains, because if you think about it, I've already mentioned the fact that I think I'm not going to use this because of the way it's got the outline in the center, so I don't really need this where I've combined the shapes. If you messed around and you wanted to keep yours, if you were following along and doing something similar, you could, but I'm just going to take that and I'll throw it away. I don't really actually need it, because if I really wanted to reproduce it, I very easily could, just by making a copy of this again, throwing the layer mask away and doing the same thing. So what I'll do instead is I will select these three things, and if you wanted to make sure that they don't ever change, you know, like you could also right click them and you could link them as well. That's something else. You could just say link layers, and so that way, like if you go to move one of them, it'll move all of them, and so on. But this way, if I want to go to free transform, which is Command T or Control T, I can start to scale down. And what I'll do is I'll scale from the center, holding down Option Shift, right? And then say maybe see how that looks. And I'll go ahead and commit to that. And I would have to decide on whether or not I like this extending all the way to the edge of the S or not. And it really just depends on your preference. And I think I accidentally just, used the type tool. I didn't mean to create that extra layer of type. So I would have to decide if I want the mountain to be in alignment with these edges or to be smaller. And I think this actually might be a really good opportunity for me to kind of rethink the way that I want this to be. I actually think I might want the whole thing to be a little bit smaller. So let's go back into free transform. I think I might like it so that the swoop of the S kind of leads into this mountain. So let's try that. I'll do it smaller, and then I will move it down a little bit. I might actually like this a little bit better. Let's try making it just a tiny bit smaller. It might make it a little bit more compact as well, like something like that. Let's hit commit, and I actually think I might like that a little bit better, where this is a little bit smaller and it actually feels more like it's creating its own mountain peak. I think that might actually work better. And if I wanted to go ahead, I could turn my guides back on, where I say, well, they're supposed to be visible, but it wasn't for some reason. Anyway, I can turn that back on. I could make sure that everything was in alignment if I wanted to. If I take these two objects, my text and my mountain, and I click over here where it says center, let's do the center alignment up here. And then there, now they're actually center aligned. You'll notice that the peak of the mountain is not in alignment with this eye. That might bother some people. For me, it doesn't bother me to have a little bit of that asymmetry. Let me turn the guide off really quickly, and we'll go back to turn the guide back off. I like the asymmetry. I like the fact that it's not as predictable as something that's perfectly bilateral. But I think that I actually prefer the way that this looks anyway, so I'm kind of glad I made that mistake. Now, one thing that I do notice is that now I feel like this shape is a little too close to that stroke. If I decided that I like that stroke, I would probably want to go back and make an adjustment to that left mountain shape. And I can take my tool and see, these are little things that sometimes you'll notice. Whenever you make a small mistake, you can fix it, and it actually works out pretty well. Because now I think I made a better design decision. So I can take this one and I can just drag it in so that it has more relationship to what looks like the correct margins here. And I can maybe drag that up just a little bit more. So it's not so darn close. I can drag this up just a little bit. And so now that they're a little bit further away, they look more consistent with the margins that go all the way around up here and then all the way up here as well. And so if I click off of that, I think that that now looks a little bit better in terms of the margins that are here. Okay. So I'm going to save this, and now whenever I do anything with this text, I would then be able to convert it to a shape, a vector shape, if I wanted to. So we're going to stop here, and in the next videos, we're going to move on, and I will show you how to do some other stuff with text in terms of effects and things that work well in different environments and so on. And then later, we'll even get into how to do some clipping paths and to do some kind of interesting applications. But you'll see here that now you've got something with solid black or solid white with knockouts or whatever. You don't have to ever worry about specifically with color. You could always be able to scale it and use it in lots of different applications. As you could see, the way that in some of this I did knockout, some of it was solid fill, and it's still the same logo with just different applications. Okay, you want that kind of versatility in your mark.